Hello, Goldma viewers. Welcome back. It's another day, another topic. I'm excited about this one, but I know it's not a very pleasant subject for a lot. We are talking about regulation, ICO regulations, cryptocurrency regulations, and then we're going to move over to bans. Yeah, that's what people hate the most. Like, oh, bans. Please don't talk about that. I think it's important for us to look at all aspects of the cryptocurrency universe, and a big part of that is regulation, the need for regulation, and the challenges that come with regulation. Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll start it off.
Thank you, CJ.
Well, I think there should be a healthy balance between regulation and freedom of expression, and your ability to organize yourself to actually make a business work. For instance, personally, I like small regulation. Okay.
Can you just define small regulation?
Small regulation means that you protect people's liberty. So I don't invade on your liberty in my attempt to express my business venture.
Got it.
Okay?
Got it.
I don't come over into your house and say, you know what, I'm taking your television. It's part of my business model. The government should come in and regulate that by saying your liberty should be protected. Your property should be protected.
Okay.
So that's where I mean small government should protect property, liberty, and the resources of the community. Okay? So that's what I mean about small. But when I think about regulation, regulation is just meant so that there's an organized means to protect your liberty. I mean, I shouldn't use my technology business venture to take from you. And if I do, there needs to be some regulation in place that allows some type of recourse in the court system, in the judicial system. So that's what I mean about there needs to be some type of regulation so that there's recourse in case that you infringe on my liberties. That doesn't mean that you stop me ahead of time and say, you know what, you can't even do anything, even if it doesn't invade the liberty. And I think we talked about this in pre-production. We talked about the fact that ICOs should be regulated to some degree. And it should, but we're going to probably talk about that later. But I just wanted to talk about regulation for right now. And that's why I think there should be small regulation. Minimum. The minimum is you can possibly have to protect liberties and protect property and the community property.
Just to expand on that, like I know a lot of people think that when you say something is being regulated, it's because it's a bad thing, you know. But we just need to disassociate the term regulation with something that's vile. What we're simply saying is even good things need to be regulated. For example, fire is good for cooking, right? But if it's not regulated, you might burn the house down. You understand what I'm saying? So we're not trying to criticize cryptocurrency. We are not saying that it is a bad thing, but we are saying there needs to be some sort of control so that you can use it effectively without causing harm to anyone or even to yourself. So guys, what do you think? What do you think?
All right. Regulation, I think it's 50-50. There's a point where people abuse the system. For example, we talked about small regulation. Mr. Jace talked about small regulations. So what happens in some instances is, you know, sometimes we might try regulating something to just a small extent, but you would notice in the same aspect, someone else went ahead and abused the system, something that you took as a liberty to say, you know what, this affects my business directly. someone else used it to their own advantage, like we mentioned about the coins, people creating fake coins, you know. But what I think is regulations is good if the crypto community comes together, the powers at hand, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin, everybody comes to bear and comes up with regulations that affect people who are invested in it, mainly the investor. Look at the angle, then them. Then when you have that sort of regulation in order, I think we could go ahead, but we have a long way to go. That's what I can say. We're still to go through a lot of humps. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. Things are going to happen, but regulation, I feel, is inevitable. It's going to come.
Yeah.
With governments, we might want to put our own regulations there, but your regulations are not. If you're in someone else's jurisdiction, you're going to play under their regulations.
Yeah.
Your own regulations might not go in hand with what they have regulated you. So at the end of the day, it depends what powers are at hand, what powers are working. Governments are going to regulate in their own manner, and you guys as people responsible for crypto are going to say, okay, let's regulate in this manner. But then if, for example, if you're in country X, they're going to say, you know what, yes, you might say this, but this is my jurisdiction. I don't allow that. So we have quite a long way to go, but I think regulation is good and bad.
Okay.
I'll stop there.
Mr. Ruben, thoughts?
Yeah, I like the fire example that you used, because here I have fire, and it's my personal responsibility to decide how to use the fire. Versus, well, the government issues a directive on the appropriate and inappropriate uses of fire.
Yeah.
So where's the line? Cryptocurrency is new. It's true, I can wake up and issue my own cryptocurrency tomorrow. Right? In that newness and in that unregulated space in a lot of parts of the world, where's the line? And this is something I like to think about. Where is that line of, should this thing be, this is an agreement between two consenting adults, so the government has no space, or is the government going to be asked to come in and sort of define that, well, even though you're two consenting adults, you must relate to one another in this way? I don't know, it's a question that I have.
Okay.
I think about.
I think it's very important to do that because whether we like it or not, there is such a thing as being cruel in order to be kind. My mama used to say that. She beat me and she's like, yeah, I'm being cruel in order to be kind. Of which she was kind. Thank you, Mom. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is when governments initiate certain things, like we're going to regulate this, you might not necessarily like it because you're like, this is between the two of us. Like, for example, if I decide that I want to cut off your fingers or your toes one at a time, and you agree to it, and then you die, I will still go to jail. Doesn't matter if you ask me to do it. If you say, Nyarai, I want to die today, do me this favor, slit my throat. Right here. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those legal frameworks are there to protect the both of us because no one has the power to take life. So it's like saying you can do certain things. You don't have the freedom to decide what you want to do, regardless of whether you agree, like if there's an agreement between you two or not. You have the liberty, and there's a difference because freedom means you can do whatever, whenever, however. Liberty means you can do whatever you want within these confines. So you can do whatever you want within the legal frameworks of that jurisdiction. And that's what they're trying to say about cryptocurrency, ICOs. Basically.
Good point. Good point.
No, there's a thing about this. It's a question of those confines. Okay, saying that before, in order to raise capital, I needed to jump through a lot of legal loopholes or sort of hoops. Sorry, that were difficult. If I have an idea, I have a thought, and I'm convinced that this thing is going to work, help me out. Give me a bit of money and I'll make it work.
Yeah.
You don't need banks. I don't need all these big institutions to do that. But we agree. It's not as graphic as killing me, but you might lose money. But anyway, it's not as bad. You'll still be alive. But I have this business idea and I think it's going to work. Give me some money. We accept it in our everyday lives, right? Because I can call my uncle and say, give me $5,000 and maybe he will, right? But why is it that now that we put it on the international stage, it's like, hold on now. No. The government needs to come and sort of say, well, you can't give that person $5,000 or this. Now, this is it becomes very complicated.
Okay.
But fundamentally, we have businesses that I think is going to work. Hey, who's interested in this idea? People around the world raise their hands and they're willing to commit resources to that. Why should there be overbearing regulation on that? Because this is what we as independent citizens, as free people around the world can do.
Well, there's a thin line between crowdfunding and ICOs. Very thin line.
Yeah.
And that thin line typically is stipulated by some authority who recognizes the impact that it's having on this society. The impact that I talked about in a previous show is the transfer of wealth. When transfer of wealth occurs, it actually has an impact on influence politically. Okay? That's when the government said, whoa, hold on. Whoa, horsey. It's all right for you to get a little crowdfunding. Get a little something for your cancer. Get a little something for your dog, Get a little something, a little business that you want to run out the back of your house. But don't try to become Google and have influence. Don't become another Microsoft or PayPal. Now we need to regulate that because we may or may not view you as an influencer that may not be in our favor. That's when the state comes in because, again, state wants to keep status quo.
Protect their interests.
Status quo. The state, they want status quo. They don't want changes. Okay? And that's any state. Okay? Hey, the state of here, I don't want change too much. You know what I mean? I let change happen within a certain framework, as you said, within a certain amount of liberty that everyone's given. It's the same as the state. It's understandable. So I end that to say that thin line is very difficult to define. You can't define it. There's no mathematical equation to define it. It takes consensus. And that's where you define that line. There's a consensus. And society typically defines that consensus based on their value system at that time. So, and it's right now with social media platforms, value systems are evolving very quickly and all the time. And that's what's going to happen in the crypto community. These value systems are going to be set by the consensus of the community.
Okay. All right. I need to move on to something. I just want to give you guys a scenario, right? Like, I'm all for what you're saying, that if it's something that two parties agree upon, then there's no need for a third party to come and say, wait. If you're going to do it our way, or do it according to what we tell you. The idea of ICOs, right, was borrowed from the concept of IPOs, right? Offering your shares to the public.
And crowdfunding.
Yeah, and crowdfunding. Yeah. Right. So let me just use the IPO one. Okay. If I was to list my company, right, and publicly trade it, and it doesn't exist, it's not there. I have the paperwork, yes, I paid, I registered, but there's no company, and I offer my shares. Would that be legal?
Well, the basis of IPO is that there is there typically is a company,
right?
And they typically go through series of funding, Series A, B, whatever.
Yeah.
All these different series of funding. There's a
Yeah.
legitimate company, and there's a structure and chain of command and whatnot.
So those are things that they have to comply to, right?
They have to comply to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the part I want to bring out, that there needs to be an element of compliance, even within the ICO world. It might not be the exact same thing, but if your business model is not going to make money, then you have no business to share that space with legitimate businesses, because you're making legitimate businesses look bad. But who's going to put you out? Who's going to say, no, you don't qualify, you can't be there? No, we need to protect investors. Nobody right now.
But
Unless
this is the thing, though.
we can regulate it.
This is the thing. We're saying that we're all mature and we're all adults. And we can have reasonable conversations about what's going to work, what isn't going to work. We have our own intuitions and things like that. So by having this open space fraught with the risk that you're talking about, I allow so many new ideas to come out that wouldn't have come out beforehand. Look, if I want to start a new software company and I move over to Silicon Valley, it's a full-time job looking for money. Like, you actually spend more time looking for money than you actually spend doing the work. So, like, what's the point of that? Whereas if I can communicate to people who would actually be interested in using what I have to, like, what I have to create and what I have to offer, isn't that more meaningful? Isn't it more meaningful to engage people directly instead of going through all of these processes, long and drawn out?
Okay, what you're saying makes sense, right? I'm not disagreeing with that it's good that you actually have direct contact to your potential investors. But what I'm saying is, you are the legitimate business. Are you comfortable sharing that space with me, who has a fictitious project, and I'm asking people to invest in that? When you're sharing that space, you run the risk of being painted with the same brush as me.
There is risk, but
Yeah. Eddie?
You know what I think? Okay, there are different aspects here. We're all adults. I'm going into this knowing what I'm getting into, right? You offered this, and I said yes. So in any aspect, whether it's crypto or not, know that there's risk. You're not going to go into anything that does not have risk. So we always say, do your due diligence. So before you invest in anything, you have to look deep into it. Go through the white paper, ask all the necessary questions and do this, right? Okay, fine, you've done that. So the issue that also comes is, what if you guys disagree? Okay, yes, we've agreed as adults. I've given you this money, you've done this, but now I don't agree with something else you've done because I've put a lot of money into it. And we're fighting, and I want to take you to court. Now we've entered into the realm of
Yeah.
So hence, it's not only going to happen between the two of you. It's going to happen between other people. It's a whole network of people. Some would argue that it's going to become the government's problem whether you like it or not.
Okay.
So what I can say is, it's up to y'all to have a proper agreement, to do your due diligence, to say, you know what, before you invest this amount of money, you need to know that it's going to go like this, it's going to go like this, right? If it does not go like this, such and such is going to happen. If all the paperwork doesn't line up, do not invest. If everything does not look as if it's right, don't invest. But if you just do because this guy's a sweet talker, he's saying, this project's going to go like this, you will lose most of the time. Look into everything. So personally, I don't think anyone else has any business coming into what you two guys agree on, right? It will become the government's business when every time you invest in something, it doesn't go well because you didn't do your business, and then now you have to go to court, you have to do this. Now they'll be like, you know what, you're not responsible enough, you're not being an adult. But if you look into everything in a manner that, do your due diligence, you'll be fine. You'll be sorted. There won't be much.
I have a question on that one, though. Why is there so much pressure put on companies or activity in ICOs, whereas similar types of activity happen on publicly traded companies? Look, Apple held on to they didn't pay dividends for quite a long period of time, what were you going to do? Sue them? Their money. Because Apple is a juristic person and they can decide to do whatever they want. Yeah, you bought shares, but your share ownership is not over the prerequisite to actually tell that board to do whatever they want, to do what you want them to do. It's just the nature of investment, right?
Yeah. But if Apple had gone for 3 years without paying dividend, those investors have somewhere to report to. If I scam you right now, I offer you tokens, I give you, a solid business plan, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to, and then you don't receive the tokens to begin with, and I just disappear. Who are you going to report to? Nobody. You understand?
That's a very valid point. And I want to definitely go back to when you talked about the IPO aspect, and then I'll come back and address recourse, for when you're not getting tokens. The one thing that it is important to know, IPOs are typically not available to people who are not accredited investors.
Yeah.
You just can't go out to the public and offer the IPO. Thus, when the IPO phase is over, now it's a publicly traded stock or share. And, in a way, I'm against that. I like for everyone to be able to be on the market. Yeah. So, hey, I put my glass up there, you put your glass, and here's this other glass. Which one is the cleanest? You pick the one that's clean. Maybe you might say, well, you know what? It might be a little dirt on it, but I'm going to take the risk. I should have that liberty and the freedom to want to assume that risk. It's not up to the government, in my opinion, to now regulate risk for me. No, give me the ability and give me the options to pick my risk. Maybe I want a high risk because high risk does what? High returns. Yeah. Now, low risk typically gives you low returns. I'm not interested in low returns. Ever. Ever. I'm looking for high returns all the time. And I got a whole philosophy behind that. But, and that's my personal opinion. Other people may want low risk for whatever reason they want. They should have that liberty to do that. And for your last question about what's the recourse for a person who doesn't get what they asked for, like on the Goldma site, there's terms which I can be held accountable for in the jurisdiction that we're registered in. That's why it's important in the white paper that you get to see, where are you registered at? What's your company registration? Now I'm bound by the laws here in Zimbabwe with respect to a contract. If I make a contract with you, meaning that if I make a purchase with you, there is consideration. When I give you something, that's typically considered for consideration. That's a contract. Now I can come back to this court. I didn't get it. I'm coming to Zimbabwe. Yeah. I gave you $1 million. I want my $1 million back, plus my travel fees and my attorney fees. That's the way I think it should work, personally. Yes. But you got to have enough sense, personally also, to know, look, man, why are you going to invest in this and there's no company registration? Why are you going to invest in that and you don't see or understand how you're going to get your money back? To me, it goes back to the old adage, a fool and his money soon parts ways, okay? And I think we should live by that nature. If you're a fool, what you doing with the money? Let someone like me get your money and do something good with it. You know what I mean? You're a fool and you're doing something that is not, you're trying to support your ego or whatever you're trying to do, greed. Nah, man.
Okay.
But I just want to cut in there before you jump in. It's good that you mentioned what happens with the IPOs and the series of funding. The people who make the most money with your Google, your Facebook, and those software giants, the people who made the most money are people who had access.
Right. At the IPO level.
Yeah. And you and I couldn't get it.
Couldn't.
Even if you have $1 million, if there's a company like Google that comes up right now, you basically have to beg people who are in that community. Imagine you have $1 million or $5 million and you have to beg someone to get access to that. ICO comes and says it blows all of that out of the water. New ICO, 35%, 25%, 20% discount in the pre-private sale, open to everyone.
You see,
We seem to have reached the end of our discussion. I'm sorry, Eddie. Time is just not our friend right now, but this is hot right now. So we are going to have a separate segment where we are going to be debating. You're going to see ties flying. I'm kidding. But we're going to get into it because I like how this is provoking our thinking and would like to do the same for you. So for this segment, it's bye for now.